Late one autumn evening, a man stood alone on an empty train platform. The station was quiet. The last train had already departed, and the wind carried fallen leaves across the concrete floor. He sat on a weathered wooden bench and stared into the darkness beyond the tracks. In his hand was a notebook. Its pages contained plans he had written years earlier, dreams, goals, promises he had made to himself. As he turned the pages, memories returned. The business he wanted to build, the book he hoped to write, the healthier life he promised to create, the skills he intended to master. Some dreams had faded, others remained unfinished, and a few had quietly disappeared altogether. For a long time he sat there asking himself a question that countless people have asked before him. What happened? Not what happened to the world, not what happened to other people. What happened to the person who once believed those things were possible? The answer did not come immediately. Instead, another realization slowly emerged. Most of those dreams had not ended because they were impossible. They had ended because the journey had become longer than expected. The excitement had faded. The progress had slowed. Life had become busy. Difficulties had appeared. Discouragement had whispered its familiar message, and little by little, the road had been abandoned. The man closed the notebook and looked down the empty railway line stretching into the distance. The tracks disappeared into darkness. He could not see where they ended, yet he knew they continued far beyond the horizon. And in that moment, he understood something that would stay with him forever. Most meaningful journeys look exactly like those railway tracks. You rarely see the destination from the beginning. You rarely know how long the journey will take. You rarely receive guarantees that everything will work out. All you can see is the next stretch of track, the next step, the next day, the next effort. Perhaps you have experienced something similar. Maybe there is a goal you once pursued with enthusiasm, but now approach with uncertainty. Maybe there is a dream that feels farther away than it did when you first began. Maybe there is a challenge in your life that has tested your patience, your confidence, or your hope. If so, you are not alone. Every meaningful journey eventually reaches a place where motivation is no longer enough. A place where excitement fades and persistence must take its place. A place where success is no longer determined by talent alone, but by the willingness to continue. History rarely remembers the days when people felt like giving up. It remembers what happened because they didn't. The athlete who trained through countless unseen mornings. The entrepreneur who endured years of setbacks before finding success. The scientist who repeated failed experiments until a breakthrough finally appeared. The parent who continued showing up day after day, year after year. The ordinary people who quietly stayed with something long enough for extraordinary results to emerge. There is a quiet lesson hidden within all of these stories. Life is not shaped only by the moments when we begin, nor is it shaped only by the moments when we arrive. It is shaped by everything in between. The long middle, the difficult stretches, the invisible progress, the ordinary days when no one is watching, the moments when quitting seems reasonable, and the moments when we choose to continue anyway. Tonight, we are going to explore those moments. We are going to walk alongside people who face disappointment, uncertainty, setbacks, failure, and doubt. People who discovered that perseverance is not about never struggling. It is about refusing to let struggle have the final word. As we travel through their stories, you may find echoes of your own journey, your own dreams, your own challenges, your own unfinished chapters. So find a comfortable place. Allow yourself to slow down, and together, let us explore one of the most powerful forces available to any human being. The quiet, life-changing power of staying the course. The quiet strength of showing up again. Years ago, in a small coastal town, there lived a young teacher named Daniel. When Daniel graduated from university, he carried a vision that filled him with enthusiasm. He wanted to inspire children. He imagined classrooms filled with curiosity and excitement. He pictured himself making a lasting difference in young lives. His first year began exactly as he had hoped. Every lesson felt meaningful, every challenge felt worth overcoming, every success energized him. But as the years passed, reality slowly replaced idealism. The work became repetitive. The paperwork increased. Some students seemed uninterested. Parents occasionally complained. Administration requirements multiplied. Many evenings ended with exhaustion rather than fulfillment. By his 7th year of teaching, Daniel found himself questioning everything. One rainy afternoon, after another difficult week, he sat alone in his classroom. The students had gone home. The building was quiet. Sheets of unfinished work covered his desk. Daniel stared out the window and wondered whether he had chosen the wrong career. Around him, friends were earning higher salaries. Some had started businesses. Others were climbing corporate ladders. Meanwhile, he felt as though he was standing still. For months, the thought of leaving grew stronger, yet something stopped him. Not certainty, not passion, simply a decision to continue for one more year. 1 year became 2. 2 became 3. Daniel continued showing up. Not because every day was rewarding, but because he believed that meaningful work often required patience. Then something unexpected happened. One evening, nearly 15 years after his first day as a teacher, he received a letter. It came from a former student. The young man wrote about growing up in a difficult home. He described feeling invisible and discouraged. Then he mentioned a teacher who had quietly encouraged him during a challenging period. A teacher who had noticed his potential when few others did. That teacher was Daniel. The student explained that he had eventually become a doctor, and he credited many people for helping him reach that point. But he specifically remembered one conversation that had occurred years earlier inside a small classroom. A conversation Daniel barely remembered. For the student, however, it had changed everything. Daniel sat silently after reading the letter. Suddenly, years that had seemed ordinary took on new meaning. The countless mornings, the repetitive routines, the days when progress seemed invisible, they had mattered more than he realized. Perhaps you have experienced something similar. Maybe your efforts feel unnoticed. Maybe your work seems repetitive. Maybe you wonder whether the small actions you take each day truly matter. The challenge is that meaningful results often arrive long after the effort that created them. Human beings naturally seek immediate rewards. Our minds are wired to notice quick outcomes. When results are delayed, motivation begins to fade. We start questioning whether our actions are making any difference. Yet many of life's most valuable achievements operate on a delayed timeline. Relationships deepen slowly. Skills develop gradually. Trust grows over years. Character forms through repeated choices. The problem is not that progress is absent. The problem is that progress is often invisible while it is happening. This is why showing up matters. Not once. Not occasionally, but repeatedly. The world often portrays success as a dramatic breakthrough. In reality, success is frequently the accumulation of ordinary days handled with consistency. Daniel's story reminds us that we rarely know which moments will matter most. We cannot always see the impact we are creating. Sometimes the reward arrives years later. Sometimes it arrives in unexpected forms. And sometimes the greatest achievement is simply becoming the kind of person who continues despite uncertainty. That quiet strength leads us naturally to another lesson. Because staying the course is not only about showing up, it is also about surviving disappointment. When progress disappears. Emma had always dreamed of becoming a novelist. From childhood, she filled notebooks with stories. While other children played outside, she spent hours creating characters and imaginary worlds. Writing felt natural. It felt meaningful. It felt like a calling. After university, Emma committed herself fully to her dream. Every morning before work, she woke at 5 o'clock and wrote for 2 hours. Weekends were dedicated to writing. Vacations became writing retreats. For 3 years, she worked on her first novel. When she finally completed it, she felt proud, hopeful, certain that her hard work would soon be rewarded. Then the rejection letters arrived. One publisher declined, then another, then another. Soon there were 10, then 20, then 30. Each rejection felt personal. Each rejection chipped away at her confidence. Eventually, Emma stopped opening emails immediately because she already knew what they would contain. Months passed. The dream that once felt exciting became painful. One evening, she sat in her apartment staring at a folder filled with rejection letters. The evidence seemed overwhelming. Perhaps she simply wasn't talented enough. Perhaps she had wasted years chasing something unrealistic. The temptation to quit became stronger than ever. For weeks, she barely wrote. But during that difficult period, she noticed something important. Despite the disappointment, she missed writing. Not publishing, not recognition, writing itself. The process still brought her peace. The act of creating stories still mattered. So she made a decision. She would continue writing, not because success was guaranteed, but because the work itself remained meaningful. Several years later, her third manuscript was accepted. The novel sold modestly. It did not make her famous, but it launched a career that would eventually produce multiple successful books. When people later asked about her breakthrough, they often focused on the moment her book was accepted. Yet the true turning point happened much earlier. It occurred when she chose to continue despite rejection. There is a quiet lesson hidden here. Many people stop not because they lack ability. They stop because they mistake temporary disappointment for permanent failure. The journey toward meaningful goals rarely follows a straight line. Progress often disappears from view. Results may stall. Efforts may seem wasted. The gap between action and reward can feel unbearable. Perhaps you have experienced this. Maybe you worked hard toward something and saw little evidence that your efforts were paying off. Maybe you wondered whether continuing made sense. What Emma discovered is something psychologists have observed repeatedly. People often overestimate what can happen in a short period and underestimate what can happen over a longer one. When immediate results fail to appear, discouragement grows. Yet many breakthroughs occur shortly after the point where most people would have quit. This does not mean persistence guarantees success. Life offers no such guarantees. But quitting guarantees that future possibilities disappear. Continuing keeps them alive. The challenge is learning how to continue when visible progress vanishes, when uncertainty becomes uncomfortable, when motivation fades, and that challenge becomes even greater when the people around us begin losing faith in our journey. Which brings us to another powerful lesson. Sometimes the hardest part of staying the course is facing the doubts of others. The weight of other people's opinions. Ravi grew up in a family that valued stability above all else. His parents worked hard throughout their lives. Security mattered. Predictability mattered. Risk was something to avoid. After graduating with an engineering degree, Ravi secured a respectable job. His family was proud. Friends congratulated him. Everything appeared successful from the outside. Yet deep inside, something felt incomplete. For years, Ravi had been fascinated by sustainable agriculture. He spent evenings reading about farming innovations and food systems. The subject energized him in a way engineering never had. Eventually, he began considering a dramatic change. He wanted to leave his corporate position and start a modern farming venture. The reaction from others was immediate. Some laughed. Others warned him. Family members questioned his judgment. Friends suggested he was making a mistake. Every conversation seemed to reinforce the same message. Stay where you are. Do not risk what you already have. At first, Ravi felt confident, but repeated criticism gradually created doubt. He began questioning himself. Was he being irresponsible, naive, foolish? Months passed in uncertainty. Then one evening, while walking alone, he realized something important. The people advising him genuinely cared about him, but they were making decisions based on their own fears, experiences, and assumptions. They could offer guidance. They could share opinions, but they could not live his life. That realization changed everything. Ravi eventually pursued his venture. The early years were difficult, There were financial struggles, unexpected setbacks, moments when the criticism seemed justified. Yet he continued learning, adapting, and improving. Over time, the business stabilized and eventually flourished. Years later, many of the same people who doubted him admired his courage. But the most valuable reward was not financial success. It was knowing that he had remained faithful to a path that mattered deeply to him. Perhaps you have faced something similar. Maybe there was a dream, goal, or decision that others failed to understand. Maybe their doubts made you question yourself. The truth is that staying the course often requires distinguishing between helpful advice and limiting fear. Not every opinion deserves equal influence. People naturally evaluate your journey through the lens of their own experiences. What seems impossible to them may still be possible for you. What seems risky to them may feel meaningful to you. There is wisdom in listening, but there is also wisdom in knowing when to keep walking despite criticism. Because sometimes the path ahead only becomes visible to those willing to continue long enough to see it. And as we will discover next, one of the greatest tests of perseverance is learning how to continue when certainty disappears entirely. The courage to walk through uncertainty. There are seasons in life when the road ahead is clear. We know where we are going. We know what needs to be done. We can see the next few steps. Those seasons are comforting. But sooner or later, nearly everyone encounters a different kind of journey. A journey where the destination remains hidden. A journey where certainty disappears. A journey where the next step must be taken before the path reveals itself. For Maya, that season arrived unexpectedly. For nearly 12 years, she had worked for the same company. Her career was stable. Her salary was dependable. Her future appeared predictable. Then one ordinary Tuesday morning, everything changed. The company announced a major restructuring. Several departments would be eliminated. Positions would disappear. Within weeks, Maya found herself unemployed. At first, she responded with determination. She updated her resume, applied for jobs, reached out to contacts, confidently attended interviews, but months passed without success. Then more months. Savings slowly diminished. Confidence began to weaken. Questions started appearing late at night. What if she never found another opportunity? What if her best years were already behind her? What if she had somehow fallen permanently behind? The uncertainty became heavier than the financial pressure. Human beings can endure remarkable hardships when they know how long the hardship will last. But uncertainty creates a different kind of burden. The mind begins filling empty spaces with fear. Future possibilities become imagined disasters. Simple questions become sources of anxiety. One afternoon, while sitting in a quiet cafe, Maya noticed an elderly man sketching in a notebook. They struck up a conversation. When she shared her frustrations, the man smiled gently. "I spent 30 years as an architect," he said. "Then I lost my business during a recession." Maya listened carefully. "I thought my life had ended," he continued. "But years later, I realized something important. Sometimes uncertainty isn't a sign that you're lost. Sometimes it's the space where a new chapter is being written." Those words stayed with her, not because they solved her problems, but because they offered a different perspective. Instead of demanding certainty, Maya began focusing on the next step. Just the next step, one application, one conversation, one opportunity, one day at a time. Eventually, an unexpected role appeared. It wasn't identical to her previous career. It wasn't part of her original plan. Yet it introduced her to a field she came to love even more. Years later, she often reflected on that difficult season. Had she known the outcome in advance, the journey would have felt easier. But perhaps she would have learned less. There is a quiet lesson hidden here. Many people abandon meaningful journeys because they expect certainty before taking action. They want guarantees. They want visible proof that everything will work out. Yet life rarely offers such assurances. The entrepreneur launching a business, the student pursuing a demanding degree, the parent raising a child, the artist creating new work, the individual rebuilding after loss. None of them receive certainty. They move forward despite uncertainty. Perhaps you have experienced something similar. Maybe you are currently facing a situation where the future feels unclear. Maybe you're waiting for answers that have not arrived. Maybe you're standing at a crossroads without knowing which direction is best. There is wisdom in careful planning. But there is also wisdom in accepting that complete certainty may never come. Many of life's most meaningful journeys require faith before evidence. Not blind optimism, not reckless confidence. Simply the willingness to keep walking even when the horizon remains hidden. History offers countless examples of this truth. Scientists often spend years pursuing experiments without knowing whether success is possible. Authors write books without knowing whether anyone will read them. Athletes train for competitions they may never win. Progress often belongs to those willing to move forward before certainty arrives. And once we learn to navigate uncertainty, we discover another surprising truth. Some of life's most meaningful growth happens far more slowly than we would like. The hidden value of slow growth. In a quiet neighborhood stood a small bakery owned by a woman named Elena. When she first opened her shop, she imagined customers lining up outside. She pictured glowing reviews, growing sales, and rapid success. Instead, the reality was far less exciting. During her first week, only a handful of customers visited. Some days, she sold fewer pastries than she had expected. Weeks became months. Months became years. Business improved, but slowly, painfully slowly. Meanwhile, social media seemed filled with stories of overnight success. Restaurants that became popular instantly. Businesses that exploded with growth. Young entrepreneurs who appeared to achieve remarkable results in record time. Compared to those stories, Elena's progress felt insignificant. One evening, after another modest day of sales, she considered giving up. Perhaps she lacked talent. Perhaps the market wasn't interested. Perhaps she was wasting her time. Yet before making any decision, she reviewed her records. Something caught her attention. Although growth felt invisible day to day, the numbers told a different story. Each year was slightly better than the previous one. Customer loyalty was increasing. Revenue was rising steadily. The improvements were small, but they were real. Elena realized she had fallen into a common trap. She had been comparing her everyday reality to someone else's highlight reel. She had overlooked the power of gradual progress. So she continued, one improvement at a time, one customer at a time, 1 year at a time. A decade later, her bakery had become a beloved local institution. Families visited regularly. Visitors traveled from neighboring towns. Employees built careers there. What appeared slow in the moment had become extraordinary over time. Perhaps you have experienced something similar. We live in a world that celebrates speed, fast results, instant success, rapid transformation. Yet many of life's most valuable achievements unfold slowly. A forest grows gradually. A friendship deepens over years. Wisdom develops through experience. Trust is earned one interaction at a time. The challenge is that slow growth rarely feels exciting. It often feels frustrating. We become impatient because our minds naturally focus on visible change. When improvement occurs gradually, we overlook it. Psychologists sometimes describe this as adaptation. We adjust so quickly to small improvements that we stop noticing them. Yet slow growth possesses a hidden advantage. Because it is gradual, it tends to be sustainable. Rapid success can disappear quickly. Strong foundations require time. There is a quiet lesson hidden here. Not every journey is meant to move quickly. Some lessons require years. Some dreams mature slowly. Some opportunities arrive only after long periods of preparation. Perhaps the pace of your progress is not evidence that you are failing. Perhaps it is simply evidence that something meaningful is taking shape. History provides countless examples. The bamboo plant spends years developing roots before dramatic growth becomes visible above ground. Cathedrals once required generations to complete. Scientific discoveries often emerge after decades of research. The visible achievement is only the final chapter of a much longer story. And when we begin appreciating slow growth, we become more willing to embrace another powerful truth. Small improvements, repeated consistently, can transform an entire life. Why small improvements change everything. Jacob was not extraordinary. At least, that was how he described himself. He wasn't naturally gifted. He wasn't exceptionally talented. He wasn't unusually disciplined. In fact, for much of his life, he struggled with consistency. He started projects enthusiastically and abandoned them quickly. He set ambitious goals and rarely completed them. By his late 30s, he felt disappointed in himself. Not because he lacked dreams, but because he lacked follow-through. One New Year's Day, he made a decision. Not a dramatic decision, not a life-changing declaration, a surprisingly small one. He decided to improve by just 1% each day. Instead of trying to transform his life overnight, he focused on tiny actions. Reading a few pages, walking for 15 minutes, saving a small amount of money, practicing a skill for 20 minutes. At first, the changes seemed meaningless. Nothing dramatic happened. No sudden breakthrough appeared. Friends noticed nothing different. Months passed. Then something interesting occurred. The small improvements began connecting together. Reading improved his knowledge. Knowledge improved his confidence. Confidence encouraged new opportunities. Better habits improved his health. Improved health increased his energy. Increased energy supported better decisions. The effects started compounding. Years later, people described Jacob as disciplined and successful. But they misunderstood the process. His transformation had not come from a single breakthrough. It came from thousands of small choices, tiny actions repeated consistently. Perhaps you have experienced the opposite. Perhaps you've underestimated the impact of small decisions. Many people assume meaningful change requires dramatic effort. Because of this belief, they wait for motivation. They wait for the perfect moment. They wait for major opportunities. Meanwhile, life is quietly shaped by small actions repeated daily. A conversation strengthens a relationship. A workout improves health. A page read increases knowledge. A kind word builds trust. These actions appear insignificant individually. Yet over time, they create remarkable results. There is a quiet lesson hidden here. The future is often determined less by occasional grand decisions and more by ordinary daily choices. This principle appears everywhere. A river shapes stone through persistence rather than force. A musician masters an instrument through practice rather than inspiration alone. A writer completes a book one page at a time. The magic lies not in the size of the action. The magic lies in repetition. Perhaps you have been waiting for a dramatic breakthrough. Perhaps you believe your goal requires some extraordinary moment. But what if the next chapter of your life begins with something much smaller? A single habit, a single decision, a single step repeated consistently. Because staying the course is rarely about making one heroic effort. It is about making many ordinary efforts and trusting that they will eventually add up to something extraordinary. And yet, even when we understand this principle, another challenge eventually appears. There will be moments when exhaustion arrives, moments when continuing feels impossible, moments when perseverance demands more than discipline alone. That is where our journey will continue next. The difference between resting and quitting. There is a misunderstanding that quietly discourages many people. It is the belief that staying the course means pushing forward endlessly, never slowing down, never pausing, never admitting exhaustion. Yet some of the strongest people are not those who never rest. They are the ones who understand the difference between resting and quitting. Oliver learned this lesson the hard way. For nearly 5 years, he had been building a small technology company. When he started, enthusiasm carried him through long days and sleepless nights. He worked weekends, skipped vacations, answered emails at midnight, ignored signs of fatigue. At first, his sacrifice seemed worthwhile. The company grew steadily, new clients arrived, revenue increased, People admired his work ethic. But beneath the surface, something was beginning to crack. The exhaustion accumulated quietly. Small frustrations became larger. Simple decisions felt difficult. His patience disappeared. Even success no longer felt satisfying. One morning, after arriving at his office, Oliver sat at his desk and stared at his computer screen. For nearly 20 minutes, he did nothing. He felt empty, not because he lacked goals, not because he lacked opportunities, because he had depleted himself completely. That evening, he told a mentor he was thinking about shutting down the business. The mentor listened carefully, then asked a simple question. "Do you want to quit the journey, or do you simply need rest?" Oliver sat silently. Until that moment, he had never considered there might be a difference. Over the following weeks, he stepped back. Not permanently, temporarily. He reduced his workload, spent time with family, walked outdoors, read books unrelated to business, allowed his mind to recover. Gradually, his clarity returned. The challenges remained, the responsibilities remained, but his perspective changed. Months later, he realized he had not wanted to abandon the dream. He had simply needed space to breathe. There is a quiet lesson hidden here. Many people quit during moments of exhaustion and mistake fatigue for truth. When we are tired, problems appear larger. Obstacles seem permanent. The future looks darker. Our judgment becomes clouded. Perhaps you have experienced something similar. Maybe there was a time when you felt ready to walk away from something important. A relationship, a career, a goal, a dream. Yet what you truly needed was recovery, not surrender. Modern life often glorifies relentless effort. But nature teaches a different lesson. Even the strongest seasons alternate. Day becomes night. Summer becomes winter. Activity gives way to rest. Growth itself requires recovery. Athletes understand this principle well. Muscles grow stronger not during exertion alone, but during periods of recovery. Without rest, progress eventually stops. The same is true emotionally and mentally. Staying the course does not mean exhausting yourself into collapse. It means learning how to pause without abandoning the journey. Learning how to recover without losing direction. Learning how to step back while remaining committed. Sometimes the bravest thing a person can do is continue. And sometimes the wisest thing a person can do is rest before continuing. Because the road ahead is often longer than expected. And those who hope to travel far must learn how to preserve their strength. Yet even with rest, another challenge inevitably arrives. Failure. Not the fear of failure, actual failure. The kind that leaves scars. The kind that forces us to begin again. And strangely enough, failure often becomes one of the greatest teachers on the journey. What failure teaches those who stay. Sophia had always been ambitious. From a young age, she believed hard work would lead to success. Teachers praised her. Employers promoted her. Achievements accumulated steadily. For years, life seemed to confirm her belief that effort and success traveled together. Then came the promotion she had dreamed about. A senior leadership role. Greater responsibility. Greater visibility. A chance to prove herself. At first, everything seemed promising. But as months passed, challenges multiplied. Projects stalled. Teams struggled. Important decisions produced disappointing results. Despite her best efforts, performance declined. Eventually, she was removed from the position. The experience devastated her. For the first time in her life, she felt she had truly failed. Not merely encountered a setback. Failed. Friends tried to comfort her. Colleagues encouraged her, but internally, she felt humiliated. She questioned her abilities, her judgment, her future. For nearly a year, she carried the disappointment with her. Then something unexpected happened. She began seeing the experience differently. Looking back, she realized the promotion had exposed weaknesses she never knew existed. She had struggled with delegation, avoided difficult conversations, focused too heavily on perfection. The failure revealed blind spots that success had hidden. Slowly, she began learning, reading, seeking mentorship, developing new skills. Several years later, she accepted another leadership role. This time, she approached it differently, with greater humility, greater awareness, greater wisdom. And she succeeded, not because she had avoided failure, because she had learned from it. Perhaps you have experienced something similar. Maybe there was a moment when something important did not work out. A business failed, a relationship ended, an opportunity disappeared, a dream collapsed. At the time, it felt like the end of the story. But life has a curious way of revealing meaning later. There is a quiet lesson hidden here. Success often teaches us what works. Failure teaches us who we are. When things go well, we rarely examine ourselves deeply. When things go poorly, reflection becomes unavoidable. We discover our weaknesses, our assumptions, our limitations. And although those discoveries can be uncomfortable, they are often invaluable. History offers many examples. Inventors whose early prototypes failed repeatedly. Athletes who lost before they learned how to win. Writers whose manuscripts were rejected. Scientists whose experiments produced years of disappointment. Failure did not make them remarkable. Their response to failure did. The difference lies in whether failure becomes a stopping point or a learning point. Those who stay the course understand something important. Failure is information, not identity. A failed attempt does not define a person. A setback does not determine the future. One difficult chapter does not decide how the story ends. Perhaps there is something in your own life that still feels like a failure. A regret, a disappointment, a path that never unfolded as planned. Maybe there is a lesson hidden within it that has not fully revealed itself yet. Because sometimes the very experiences we wish had never happened become the experiences that prepare us for what comes next. And often, what comes next requires another form of strength. The strength to rebuild. The strength found in rebuilding after setbacks. After a devastating storm swept through a rural community, many families faced enormous losses. Homes were damaged, fields were flooded, years of work disappeared within a matter of hours. Among those affected was a farmer named Henry. For more than 20 years, Henry had cultivated the same land. Every season represented months of effort. Every harvest reflected years of knowledge. When the storm arrived, much of that work was destroyed. The damage was overwhelming. Neighbors gathered in disbelief. Some considered leaving altogether. The task of rebuilding seemed impossible. For several days, Henry did little except walk through his fields, observing, thinking, grieving. One evening, his granddaughter joined him. She looked at the damaged land and asked quietly, "Will everything grow back?" Henry smiled gently. "Not everything," he replied, "but enough." The next morning, he began rebuilding. Not because he felt optimistic, not because he was certain of success, because rebuilding was the only path forward. Day after day, he repaired fences, cleared debris, prepared the soil. The work was slow. Progress was frustrating. Yet he continued. Months later, new growth appeared. Not identical to what existed before. Different, but alive. Years afterward, Henry often reflected on that season. The storm had taken much from him, but it had also revealed something important. He was stronger than he realized. Not because he had avoided hardship, because he had endured it. Perhaps you have experienced your own storm, maybe not a literal one, a personal one, the loss of a job, the end of a relationship, financial difficulties, health challenges, unexpected changes that disrupted everything you had planned. Such experiences can leave us feeling as though years of effort have been erased, as though we are starting over. Yet there is a quiet lesson hidden here. Starting over is not the same as starting from scratch. When we rebuild, we carry experience, wisdom, resilience, lessons earned through struggle. The person rebuilding is rarely the same person who began the original journey. They are stronger, wiser, more capable. The world often admires those who never fall, but reality tells a different story. Many of the strongest people are those who fell, recovered, and continued. Their strength was forged through rebuilding, through choosing hope after disappointment, through continuing after loss. There is a reason ancient forests often become stronger after surviving storms. Their roots grow deeper, their structures adapt, their resilience increases. Human beings are much the same. Difficult experiences can break us, or they can deepen us. Often, the difference depends on whether we choose to keep moving forward. Perhaps there is a setback in your life that still feels unfinished. Perhaps there is a part of your story that seems damaged beyond repair. If so, remember Henry standing in those flooded fields. Remember the simple wisdom he shared. Not everything grows back, but enough. Enough to begin again. Enough to continue. Enough to create something meaningful from what remains. And as we continue this journey, we will discover that some of life's greatest rewards do not belong to the fastest people, the smartest people, or even the most talented people. They often belong to those who simply remain long enough to see what becomes possible. The compound effect of patience. There are few qualities more misunderstood than patience. Many people imagine patience as passive waiting, doing nothing, accepting circumstances without action, simply hoping that things improve. But true patience is something very different. It is active endurance. It is sustained effort over time. It is the ability to continue working towards something meaningful while accepting that results may arrive slowly. Nathan learned this lesson through an unlikely hobby. When he retired from his career, he decided to learn woodworking. At first, he imagined creating beautiful furniture within months. He purchased tools, watched instructional videos, read books, and enthusiastically began building. The reality was humbling. Measurements were inaccurate. Projects collapsed. Mistakes multiplied. What looked simple in demonstrations became surprisingly difficult in practice. Several times he considered quitting. The progress felt painfully slow. Yet each week he returned to his workshop. Not because he was talented, because he was curious. Year after year, he continued. Eventually, something remarkable happened. Skills that once required enormous concentration became natural. Techniques that seemed impossible became routine. Projects that once took months could now be completed in weeks. Visitors admired his craftsmanship. They often assumed he possessed a natural gift. Nathan would smile when he heard such comments. They were seeing the results, not the years behind them. The truth was simple. Patience had quietly transformed him, not through dramatic breakthroughs, through consistent effort repeated over time. Perhaps you have experienced something similar. Maybe there is an area of life where progress feels frustratingly slow. A career, a relationship, a business, a personal goal. The temptation is to judge progress too quickly, to evaluate success based on today's results rather than long-term direction. Yet many of life's greatest rewards emerge through accumulation. A single workout changes little. Hundreds transform health. One meaningful conversation may seem small. Years of them create deep relationships. One day of saving money feels insignificant. Decades of saving create security. Patience allows small actions to compound. The challenge is that compounding remains invisible for a long time. In the beginning, results appear tiny, sometimes non-existent. Then gradually, the accumulated effort begins producing visible outcomes. And suddenly, what once seemed insignificant appears powerful. There is a quiet lesson hidden here. Many people abandon their efforts during the invisible phase. They stop before the compounding effect has time to work. They mistake delayed results for absent results. Yet the most meaningful changes often happen beneath the surface long before they become visible. A tree develops roots before branches. A foundation is built before a house. Preparation often precedes progress. Perhaps the growth you seek is already happening in ways you cannot yet see. Perhaps your efforts are creating roots that will support future opportunities. Because staying the course often means trusting processes that have not yet revealed their rewards. And when we understand patience, we begin appreciating another important truth. Meaning itself often requires time. Why meaning takes time. In a busy city filled with constant activity, there lived a musician named Clara. From childhood, music had been her greatest passion. She dreamed of performing on grand stages, receiving recognition, sharing her art with large audiences. For years, she pursued that dream. She practiced relentlessly, performed wherever opportunities appeared, submitted recordings to competitions and festivals. Some experiences were rewarding, many were not. The audiences were often small. Recognition arrived slowly. Financial rewards were inconsistent. One evening, after performing for fewer than 20 people, Clara sat alone backstage feeling discouraged. She wondered whether her efforts truly mattered. A few moments later, an elderly woman approached her. The woman explained that she had recently lost her husband of 47 years. The grief had been overwhelming. Then she attended Clara's performance. For nearly an hour, the music had provided comfort she had not felt in months. Tears filled the woman's eyes as she thanked her. After the conversation ended, Clara remained seated for a long time. Something inside her shifted. Until then, she had measured success primarily through visibility. Audience size, recognition, external achievements. But the encounter revealed another dimension. Meaning. And meaning often develops differently than success. Meaning grows quietly, gradually, sometimes invisibly. Perhaps you have experienced something similar. Maybe there was a time when you pursued something expecting one kind of reward and discovered another. The parent raising children, the teacher guiding students, the nurse caring for patients, the volunteer helping others. Many meaningful contributions unfold away from public attention. The modern world often encourages us to chase significance through visibility, to measure value through recognition, to equate importance with popularity. Yet some of the most meaningful acts occur where few people are watching. Meaning takes time because human lives unfold slowly. The impact of kindness may not become visible for years. The influence of mentorship may appear decades later. The value of a friendship often reveals itself gradually. There is a quiet lesson hidden here. Meaning is not always found at the finish line. Sometimes it is discovered during the journey itself. Clara continued pursuing music. She still worked hard, still sought opportunities, still hoped to grow. But her relationship with the journey changed. She no longer depended entirely on future outcomes for fulfillment. She found purpose within the process, and that made staying the course easier. Perhaps one reason people quit is that they postpone all satisfaction until success arrives. They believe happiness exists only after the goal is achieved, only after the promotion, the achievement, the accomplishment. But if meaning exists only at the destination, the journey becomes exhausting. Those who stay the course often discover something different. They learn how to find purpose within the process itself. And that realization helps them overcome one of the greatest obstacles on any journey: their own doubts. The people who outlast their doubts. Every person who has attempted something meaningful has encountered doubt, not occasionally, repeatedly. Doubt is one of the most common companions on any long journey. The question is not whether doubt will appear. The question is whether it will remain in control. Aisha understood this struggle well. She dreamed of becoming a surgeon. The goal required years of education, sacrifice, and intense commitment. At first, she felt confident, excited, motivated. Then reality arrived. The coursework became demanding. The examinations became difficult. Competition intensified. Mistakes felt costly. As the years passed, doubt appeared more frequently. Perhaps she wasn't smart enough. Perhaps others were more capable. Perhaps she had overestimated herself. These thoughts arrived late at night, before important exams. after difficult days, after disappointing results. Yet something interesting happened. Despite the doubts, she continued. Not because doubt disappeared, because she stopped treating doubt as a final verdict. Instead, she began seeing it as a normal part of growth. Years later, after completing her training, she reflected on the experience. The people who succeeded were not necessarily the most confident. Many struggled with uncertainty. Many questioned themselves. Many experienced fear. The difference was that they continued moving despite those feelings. There is a quiet lesson hidden here. Confidence often follows action. It does not always precede it. Many people wait to feel confident before taking the next step. Yet confidence frequently develops after repeated action, after experience, after persistence. Perhaps you have experienced something similar. Maybe there is a goal that intimidates you, a dream that feels larger than your current abilities, a challenge that awakens self-doubt. The presence of doubt does not necessarily mean you are on the wrong path. Sometimes doubt appears precisely because the path matters, because growth is occurring, because you are moving beyond familiar territory. History offers countless examples. Scientists doubted experiments, artists doubted their work, athletes doubted their readiness, leaders doubted their decisions, yet they continued, not because they possessed perfect certainty, because they refused to allow uncertainty to make their decisions. The people who stay the course are not fearless. They simply learn to walk alongside fear without surrendering to it. And when they do, something remarkable often happens. They begin discovering rewards they never expected, rewards far beyond the original goal. The unexpected rewards of perseverance. When Michael began training for his first marathon, his objective seemed straightforward. Run the race, cross the finish line, achieve the goal. That was all. He imagined the race itself would be the reward. The months leading up to it, however, transformed him in ways he never anticipated. The training demanded discipline, consistency, patience, resilience, early mornings, difficult weather, physical discomfort, mental challenges. The race eventually arrived. He completed it, achieved his goal, celebrated with family and friends. Yet when he reflected on the experience later, he realized something surprising. The finish line had not been the greatest reward. The greatest reward was the person he had become while pursuing it. The discipline remained. The confidence remained. The resilience remained. The belief that he could endure discomfort remained. The goal had been temporary. The growth was permanent. Perhaps you have experienced something similar. Maybe there was a challenge that changed you along the way, a project, a relationship, a difficult season, an ambitious goal. Often we begin journeys focused on external outcomes, money, recognition, achievement, success. Yet perseverance frequently produces internal rewards that prove even more valuable. Patience, wisdom, character, perspective, strength. There is a quiet lesson hidden here. Sometimes the destination gives us less than we expected, and the journey gives us far more. The entrepreneur may gain resilience, the athlete may gain discipline, the caregiver may gain compassion, the student may gain confidence. The visible achievement becomes only part of the reward. This explains why many people look back on difficult chapters with unexpected gratitude. Not because the challenges were pleasant, because the challenges shaped them. There is a deeper truth beneath every long journey. The goal changes us. The process refines us. The obstacles strengthen us. The setbacks teach us. The persistence transforms us. And often, by the time we reach the destination, we realize that the greatest victory was never the achievement itself. It was becoming the person capable of achieving it. Perhaps there is a challenge in your life right now, a road that feels longer than expected, a dream that seems distant, a season requiring patience. If so, remember this. Not all rewards are waiting at the end. Some are already being created within you, each step, each effort, each day you continue. You may not see all of them yet, but they are there, quietly accumulating, quietly shaping you, quietly preparing you for what comes next. And what comes next is perhaps the most important lesson of all, because after every story we have explored, one final truth remains. The people who stay the course rarely do so because the road is easy. They stay because they discover something worth continuing for, something larger than temporary discomfort, something deeper than immediate results. And that is where our journey now turns toward its final reflection. As our journey together begins to draw to a close, it is worth returning to where we started, to that quiet moment that arrives in nearly every life, the moment when enthusiasm fades, when progress slows, when uncertainty grows louder, when the road ahead appears longer than expected, the moment when a person quietly asks, "Should I keep going?" Perhaps you have encountered that moment before. Perhaps you are standing in it right now. Maybe there is a dream you have carried for years. Maybe there is a relationship that requires patience, a career that demands persistence, a recovery that feels slower than you hoped, a goal that remains stubbornly out of reach. Or perhaps your challenge is invisible to everyone else. A private battle, a personal struggle, a burden you carry quietly while continuing to move forward one day at a time. If there is one truth that echoes through every story we have explored, it is this: the most important journeys in life rarely unfold according to schedule. They take longer, they test us more deeply, they demand more patience than we expect. And yet, those same journeys often shape us in ways we could never have imagined when we first began. Think of Daniel, who continued teaching long enough to discover that his influence had quietly changed lives. Think of Emma, who endured rejection after rejection before finding her path as a writer. Think of Ravi, who learned to trust his own convictions when others doubted him. Think of Maya, who kept moving through uncertainty without knowing what waited ahead. Think of Elena, whose slow growth eventually became lasting success. Think of Jacob, whose small daily improvements transformed his future. Think of Oliver, who discovered that rest and surrender are not the same thing. Think of Sophia, whose failure became one of her greatest teachers. Think of Henry, who rebuilt after the storm. Think of Clara, who found meaning beyond recognition. Think of Aisha, who learned that doubt does not have to control a person's decisions. And think of Michael, who discovered that the greatest reward was not reaching the destination, but becoming the person capable of reaching it. Their stories are different. Their challenges are different. Their circumstances are different, yet they share one common thread. They stayed. Not perfectly, not fearlessly, not without setbacks, not without moments of exhaustion or uncertainty. They simply continued, one step, then another, then another. There is a quiet lesson hidden here. When we look at successful people from a distance, we often focus on their achievements. We see the finished book, the thriving business, the healthy relationship, the accomplished goal, the visible result. What we do not see are the countless ordinary days that made those outcomes possible. The mornings when motivation was absent, the evenings filled with doubt, the failures that no one celebrated, the sacrifices that remained invisible, the moments when quitting seemed easier. The truth is that many remarkable accomplishments are built upon thousands of unremarkable moments. Moments when someone simply decided to continue. Perhaps that is why perseverance is so powerful. Not because it guarantees success. Life offers no such promise. But because perseverance keeps possibility alive. Every day you continue, new opportunities remain possible. New lessons remain possible. New growth remains possible. The story remains unfinished. And as long as the story remains unfinished, hope remains alive. Perhaps there was a time when you believed progress should always feel dramatic. That meaningful change should be obvious. That success should arrive quickly. But life often works differently. The roots grow before the tree. The foundation is built before the house. The preparation comes before the opportunity. Much of the most important work happens beneath the surface, out of sight, invisible, quiet, yet deeply important. Maybe there is something in your life that feels invisible right now, efforts that seem unnoticed, progress that feels slow, a journey that appears uncertain. If so, remember this. Just because you cannot see all the results does not mean the results are not forming. Seeds spend long periods beneath the soil before anyone notices growth. The absence of visible evidence is not proof that nothing is happening. Sometimes growth is occurring in hidden places. Sometimes preparation is unfolding quietly. Sometimes the greatest changes are taking place within you. And perhaps that is the deepest lesson of all. Staying the course is not merely about reaching goals. It is about becoming stronger than you once were, becoming wiser through experience, becoming more patient, more resilient, more compassionate, more capable. The destination matters, but the transformation matters too. Because there may come a day when you finally arrive at the goal you have pursued for years. You may achieve the success you hoped for. You may reach the milestone you dreamed about. You may stand at the finish line and look back over the road behind you. And when that day comes, you may discover something unexpected. You may realize that the person standing there is very different from the person who first began the journey. Stronger, calmer, wiser, more grateful. The road changed you. The challenges shaped you. The persistence transformed you. And perhaps that transformation was one of the greatest rewards all along. There is another quiet truth worth remembering. You do not need to see the entire path. You only need enough courage for the next step, not the next year, not the next decade, just the next step. Life has always been lived that way. One decision, one day, one effort, one act of faith at a time. The future is built from these small moments. And the people who ultimately travel far are often not those who move the fastest. They are the ones who refuse to stop moving altogether. So if you find yourself facing a difficult season, if the journey feels longer than expected, if progress feels slow, if doubts have become frequent companions, remember the simple truth at the heart of everything we have explored together. You do not have to be perfect to stay the course. You do not need endless confidence. You do not need certainty. You do not need extraordinary talent. You simply need the willingness to continue. One more conversation, one more attempt, one more page, one more practice session, one more application, one more sunrise, one more step, and then another. Because remarkable journeys are rarely completed through extraordinary moments alone. They are completed through ordinary moments, repeated with courage, through patience, through hope, through persistence, through staying. And perhaps years from now, when you look back upon your own story, you will realize that the moments you thought were slowing you down were actually strengthening you. The obstacles were teaching you, the delays were preparing you, the struggles were shaping you, and the road itself was quietly becoming part of the reward. So wherever you are today, whatever journey you are walking, whatever challenge stands before you, may you find the strength to continue. May you trust the value of small steps. May you remain patient during slow seasons. May you find meaning in the process, and may you discover, in your own time, the extraordinary power of staying the course. Thank you for spending this time with me. If this journey resonated with your heart, carry its lessons gently into the days ahead. Remember that progress is often quieter than we expect. Growth is often slower than we desire, and meaningful achievements are often built one small step at a time. The road may not always be easy, it may not always be clear, but every step forward matters. And as long as you continue, the story is still being written. Until our paths cross again, take care of yourself, trust the journey, and never underestimate the power that lies within simply staying the course. This is the hopeful narrator, wishing you peace, strength, and hope for the road ahead.